Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to team meeting number 79.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm every single time I name the team meeting number, I'm just so amazed that we lasted so long. That we've been doing this so long, that we're reaching 79. 79 is, barring a couple of weeks that we've missed. We've been going for almost 1.5 years with our team meetings now. So it's completely amazing. Oh. Hello? Oh. So it's amazing. We'll see if we can get connected again. And so this week we're going to be talking about some the updates on the onboarding. We're going to show new onboarding pages. We're going to discuss the certificate philosophy, and we have some discussion on some articles that we read this week. Rob, would you like to discuss talk about the updates on the onboarding?
Yeah,
Hello?
Hold on, Daniel.
Okay. Technical issues.
Okay, we should be now working much better because guess what? I had the live stream going while I was on the meeting just to check it, and so it was echoing through. So let's now go through the we've already gone through the agenda. So let me talk. We're on the first piece, which is the onboarding. So we're going to just talk a little bit about that, which is the onboarding is going really well. We've changed both the way in which we're using Podio, our database, to track much more closely faculty moving through our system. Now, before we instituted this, we had kind of a, for those of you familiar with the movie, that famous baseball movie where they talk about if you build it, they will come, which is about a guy who builds a baseball field in the middle of Kansas, and then all these, famous baseball ghosts appear and play games on this Field of Dreams, it was called. That type of our idea was that that was going to work, and it would cut down on the amount of time we had to spend with faculty because there were all these free resources. Now, for a good 20% of faculty, they can move through 20% of the people who engage with us. They can move through, develop a course, and work through how to use Canvas, and it's been really successful because that's the way we've developed about 49 of our courses that we have now approved and that we're selling, that we're working with other institutions to offer. However, what we're doing now is a little bit different. When someone sends us an inquiry, we literally are in much more constant contact with them, emailing, setting up an appointment where they talk with me, then moving through to doing a little bit of a diagnostic to figure out what type of support they need to use Canvas, and then checking in with them as they develop their course online, and then they submit it, which helps us to do the evaluation. And we're really trying to close the cycle time for course development to somewhere in between. Our goal would be 3 or 4 months, which is still a lot shorter than most educational institutions. In addition, with our faculty onboarding, we're offering we try to offer as many free services as possible for people to use as they're developing their classes. But sometimes people need extra help. And so we have, of course, these 2-week classes on 2-week classes with Linda Kaiser that help faculty develop their pedagogical skills, or a much more focused work that they can use with Canvas, that they can do with Canvas to learn how to use that platform. And then, of course, we also have a service that we offer, which is if you need a lot of help or you need polishing your classes, graphics added, graphic design, we're charging $25 per hour to help you do that in terms of a course development work. And so that's helping, us generate some income, which helps us, with, keeping the lights on and deferring costs. And the system's working out a lot better. We're seeing a lot more movement and engagement from faculty in terms of the interaction. I really like the system as it is now because it's really high touch. We also get to talk with the faculty a whole lot more to figure out their strengths, and also some amazing connections that people have in terms of wanting to develop courses in women's studies, sexual violence on campus, programs in that, which is really, really important. Programs in philosophy, some sciences and some history classes. This morning I fielded a call from a faculty member about a big history class that he would like to develop. So all of those are making, again, it's fun to get back to working with people, and rather than just going out and talking with institutions.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, no problem. So that would be the update on the onboarding. Dan, go ahead.
What I'm very much hearing about the updates on the onboarding is also the things that we've been saying to our faculty members as well. Like keep it, what's very, very important for whatever class that you're doing is to keep the class high touch. I mean, we have a small select group of students which people get in the class, and we just make sure that we can communicate with each of the students rather than in a big MOOC environment where you have 100,000 and a million of it, about 2,000 students, whatever it is. But then you have rather than not being able to focus on anybody at all, this actually gives people a lot of ability, gives you and me the ability to really focus on what the issues are that faculty are having, and actually be able to help them with the issues that they're having, and not have somebody say of holding up their hand saying, please help me, and just missing them just because of the amount of work of the amount of other students that are around you. So it's really, really advantageous as well. I think that really helps us now to have a smaller, tighter knit faculty, and of course, as each new faculty member comes on board, we can work with them as well. We'll find a good way to work with them and keep it high touch and keep the finger on the pulse of the people and of the faculty.
Yeah, and it's also changing sort of our idea of scale, and of course, the sustainability. I mean, the business model is designed where we have about 100 faculty teaching, 100 classes and interacting with 1,000 students who are taking 1,000 people taking one class or any combination thereof. And really, again, as we limit class size to 25 students, it will be interesting to see if we're going to limit sort of the size of a pod. Okay, for example, we're working to get this up to that 1,000 and that 100, but then creating smaller communities and groups of people where we can be constantly interacting, and we know the people that we're working with, rather than what happens at a lot of places where you get your call, your issue assigned to a particular queue with somebody who you've never worked with. I think we're going to be, seeing that the technology can re-engage community in these, high touch, environments. Is that scalable? Yes, with good protocols, where you're creating these smaller learning communities, but it's certainly not going to be, an amorphous, huge blob like, Facebook. Where you're just interacting with a program. And in terms of my sort of take on different, venture capitalists or funding markets, that they are still really looking for the, decacorns, the $10 billion companies, or the unicorns, the $1 billion companies, but they're focused in on the app and the technology piece, searching for that magic bullet, where really, what we're doing here is, disintermediating sort of, a bureaucracy, and really trying to connect with the faculty and the students. So that's good. Just a little feedback from, the interactions is that, and the classes, is that I think the biggest trouble that people have in terms of the course development is relying a little bit too much on text. in terms of, you know, their page placement, how they're, you know, creating their pages, and not thinking that, you know, what you really need is to be thinking of pictures, video, audio, extra resources that students can, you know, take advantage of. And remember, it's all high touch. You use the pages, you use the discussions to create opportunities where you can interact with people and talk to them and make their educational experience really, really good. And again, that's a little bit different skill set than most academics are trained with. And so, you know, it's going to be interesting to see over the next couple of years the shake up in terms of the people that are able to make the transition and the people that are not. So all good stuff. Do you want to just show, you know, a few of the onboarding pages that have been put up, Daniel?
Yeah. Yes, I have them right here. I'm going to just get them in front of me. Here. So I've been working with currently. I think you've seen it previously from Professor Ferrero, but I've been working recently with Dr. Sadler, and I've been doing two courses, designing two courses for him. So one is, of course, a course for his existentialist philosophy and literature, which is one of my favorite courses that he teaches. Although I haven't seen the other course, I wouldn't have. But this one is a nice course to do. And basically, we've taken the same type of layouts that we have with the Israel-Palestinian course that I put together for the landing page for the Israeli and Palestinian course that I put together for Professor Ferreira, and we just made a list of some small changes to it, so Dr. Sadler can fit has his thing in there. That I have for, because Dr. Sadler's course is in very far away, or in quite some time, but I've been discussing some additional layers to this, so that people aren't redirected to a course which isn't going to happen for another 6 months, but they're actually being led to a place where they perhaps can give up their email rather than immediately signing up for a course. Maybe collecting some email addresses from people, so they can actually. So you can actually talk to them over a longer period and actually keep them informed of what the progress is of the courses and perhaps what other courses that you might be doing, whether that be with Oplerno, whether it be in another place somewhere else. So you can keep exchange a lot of information that way. So we've been discussing that, and I've also been working on of course, I've been cleaning up or making some changes to this course, or Dr. Ferreira's course. And I'm also working with two other faculty members, or I will be working with two other faculty members this week to be able to implement their courses. Because all these courses are being implemented the philosophy courses are we're currently concentrating on the philosophy courses because Rob is working on something very special. Rob, what is the thing that you're working on?
So right now we've had, you know, it's really interesting, the Burlington College relationship as it develops. By the way, on Tuesday, they're having a very big press conference with the mayor of Burlington and talking about a new design they have for Burlington College and making it much more open to the community and open globally. So check that out. They've asked about a certificate in philosophy, using a lot of the materials and the professors that we you know, that Oplerno has, and that's going to be really, really exciting. We already offer certificate classes at Oplerno, but it also means quite a lot when another institution, especially a regional one, says, "Wow, this certificate's great. We'd like our students to participate in it too." Finally. Also a really interesting piece that the Burlington College is doing is they're requiring every student at their college to take one online course. And the reason for that is they recognize that online education is going to be where people receive a lot of their retraining and continuing education. And so they want students to be familiar with that type of learning. And so they're requiring every student to take at least one course online. And that's a really forward-thinking and pretty good thing to do in terms of a requirement. Again, for the way education may be sugaring out or maybe developing, is that you'll go potentially to, between the ages of 18 to, 21, the traditional, in North America, in the States, leave home, go to a residential college, potentially. And, but afterwards, you may need to go to graduate school, but most likely you're not. But you're still going to need the ability to access training. And so by them saying, you need to take an online class, people will already be familiar with that. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, certainly. And one of the fun things, it just, as you were talking, it of course reminds me that we actually have courses in taking online courses as well.
Yep. Yeah, you can sign up for those. I mean, it's a lot of content that we've got. Again, it's just we've got to get the word out. And we're doing that through institutional affiliations. Okay. Yeah, those landing pages look great, Daniel. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop with some A/B testing to see, like you said, subscribe to a mail list for that professor, and also for Oplerno, and also, that intermediate step, that's a great idea. Instead of signing up for the class and paying for it, you can just sign up you can subscribe to the class to find out more information about it when it's going to be offered. And then hopefully later on we, snag them as the student.
You could also sign up, for example, for a philosophy track. You could, so that you get, you sign up for a certificate of philosophy, so that you get information on all the courses which might relate to the certificate that you want to take. So whether that's a course that's going to start in a month's time, which is on existentialism, or whether it's in a 6 months' time and it's on ethics, either of these courses, you just get the information of it and when it fed to you. And so that we actually create, say, interest groups for people who are what do you call it? Like faculty of thought that we can of faculties and self-sorted groups of people who can send information to.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're getting back to the, in the medieval university, the group of people who ran the school were actually the students, in terms of they were the ones that chose the professors who they wanted to learn with. But you called them from the Latin word collegium, which was a group of people who were kind of in charge of a particular part of the hills in Rome, sort of your mafias. And these hills in Rome these places were concentrating, certain hills and places concentrated on, leatherworking or silversmith or, furniture making, building, etc. And we're going kind of back to that same model where you've got these small groups of these collegium, collegial colleagues, okay, people working together in particular disciplines and sort of feeding off of the connections and the materials that they create. Difference being, though, that now it's global and it's open versus having to go through a bunch of different steps to apply or get into that college or university. Okay. Why don't we go to, two articles that we wanted to discuss. Daniel, you want to take lead on the first one?
Yeah, I will. The first article that I showed was one of our current popular articles in Higher Ed Revolution. I'll post the link in the description below for the video. It's basically a story of Nick Lind has on how he learns things that he doesn't want to learn, or that he is not interested in learning. So things like, in his college years, he had a geology lab as part of his science requirements, and his exam was something completely stupid, which was, well, I mean, if you're into geology, of course it isn't, but he thought it was stupid. It was, identify 30 rocks, and that was it. Just identify 30 rocks. So write down the calendar and see the final facts, but it goes to sits down waiting for the exam. Of course, like all students, he delays it and delays it and delays it. But then he gets to a point where he actually just says, okay, well, now I have to get this 1 point, this 1 credit, so I'm going to go have to study this. So he just sat there and tried to do it, just read these lists and looked at the rocks in his geology lab and just really couldn't get it in. And waiting, and just knew he was going to fail. And then suddenly thought, well, you know what? I'm going to switch it around. And I'm going to switch it around. And rather than I'm going to actually create something within these rocks that is going to interest me. It's going to be something where I'm going to, rather than treating it as something that I want to push away from myself, I'm not interested in it, not interested in learning it, I'm actually going to turn it around and try and get myself interested in it. So he turned it around, and he convinced himself that he really, really, really cared in it. And it was almost impossible, he says, but he did ace the final. Really, really, really about dedicating yourself. I mean, there's always something that you really don't want to learn, or that you're really not interested in. You're bored, whether it's German verb conjugations, or it means really, really boring stuff. But it is possible to learn it if you apply say a methodology of actually trying to get interested in it, finding something in it which actually appeals to you. And I really like this story, and I highlighted this story because we've had a lot of these type of stories in higher ed revolution. This was really one that really inspired me also to think, okay, this is what if these are actually. Also to think about myself, what are the things that I'm not interested in, or that I get bored with, whether it's in my work or whether it's in something else, or whether it's in learning various courses that I do or various learnings that I take. What are these? How can I apply this? And I thought this was very, very an easy. What are you doing there?
Oh, sorry, there was a thing on the screen that I had to get. Sorry.
But this was just a really, really succinct, very, very, very nice way of putting putting it, and try to get yourself interested in it. Don't try. Do it. There's no, you can't try. Just do it.
There is no try. Only do it. Yeah. I like the list part, and the fact that what he also did. Again, he flipped the responsibility for learning from the too often it's the faculty presentation or some outside force that's kind of like forcing you to do something. You have to really remember that you're working on this for yourself, and you have to be engaged with it. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. The other article that we've got is one that we'll post, which just came out today. It's an opinion piece from Inside Higher Ed. And it's really interesting in its discussion of, it's called Are Chinese Students Driving Educational Imperialism? Now, there's a lot in the article that, it's an opinion piece. There's a lot in the article that really isn't, kind of, hits up particular preconceived notions that we have of students, especially students from China who are coming to the U.S. And the failure rate being really, really high, especially because of the language issues. What the article does point out is the dependency that U.S. educational institutions have on overseas, outside the U.S. students coming into their institutions and paying full tuition. Remember that in the U.S., our programs are subsidized by the federal government in the form of student loans or Pell Grants and state sponsorship. So if you are from that particular state, you're going to be paying less than if you were from outside that state. And so a lot of institutions, as state support has fallen, have been looking outside to non-U.S. citizens to supplement their incomes because they pay the full rate, which doesn't happen too often in the States. The problem is that what they're not doing is adequate. They're chasing the dollar, to be perfectly blunt. They're doing some screening to make sure that the students can actually do the work. But in many cases, they are kind of ignoring that and just taking their money. They fail out after a year. or two because they can't keep up with the language requirements. And it's a pretty sad system. It's a really interesting article if you're not familiar with sort of the way in which the U.S. is, engaged in, importing foreign nationals to basically subsidize their educational ventures. The only solution to it really is for students to receive their money back after a certain amount of time if they aren't succeeding in doing well in the classes, especially if it's the case of misplacement of those students because of their English ability. The other solution is, of course, why not bring the classes to them, and also in Mandarin. There's really, no reason why more classes can't be made available, especially as the computer translation programs become better and better. But also, there are a lot of really great faculty members who speak Chinese who would love to be making a whole lot more money, and they can act as a great guide and faculty members to help these students acquire the particular English language skills, because the students back 10 years ago when I was doing work with the Vermont Common School, the school that I started, we did a lot of work over with Nanjing, the Jiangsu province in Nanjing, working with students on a type of computer modeling called system dynamics. And now these were, some of the top students in the province who were working with ours. But a little bit sometimes the English was an issue, but it forced our school to create a Chinese language program, and it also forced us to become much more sophisticated in terms of dealing with people who weren't speaking English, and that's a great skill. And on the opposite side, it forced that province to adopt different policies in terms of communication. They opened up their networks and their students to be able to have unfettered access to the net, and some of these students are communicating 10 years after, and some are also my Facebook friends who I hear from periodically. So the issue isn't one of, the issue is basically one of making sure that the courses match the needs of the students, and also not looking at education. It's got to make sense from a business and financial standpoint, but you can't be harvesting students from overseas and just collecting their money and using it to supplement your budgets without having the support systems in place to help those students be successful at those colleges and universities. So check out the article. It's really an interesting one, and it's going to generate a lot of debate.
Yes, certainly. I know from my experience, and one of our faculty members does a lot with security, and also talks to security researchers and reads security papers from all over the world, including with a large stream coming out of China. And in China, the main language that they write all the papers in is all English. All the security papers, because it's such a international field. They really, really have to concentrate, and they really have to make their English language skills better. I think that's also one of the reasons. I think one of the people that we've been talking to is what helps students in China to migrate to American universities. And he really says that for a lot of them, they really their thoughts about the English language and the skills that they're going to have to develop for the English language are secondary to actually being able to get to the US skills. So a lot of them are for a lot of their language skills aren't top notch. They do really need to have help in Mandarin and things like that. It's really amazing. I mean, there's also some people I've been talking to recently who are doing a similar thing with Vietnamese students. Also getting Vietnamese students to the US, and also saying whether in Vietnam the level of English is perhaps slightly better than the United than China. There couldn't say, but he was also saying they really need to have additional help before they're really able to properly fit into a US school or US university. Yeah. So.
I mean, if you were to reverse the circumstances, I mean, it would be absolutely unrealistic to think that a student coming from the US with, first or second year of Chinese could go to Beijing, University of Beijing.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. Or, Nanjing Normal. They wouldn't be successful at all. There's all kinds of different, social, cultural, linguistic issues. And you really have to have sort of a transition time, a year or so, where you are, where it's intensive language training, and also, learning about the different cultural norms, because, there are all kinds of different things that are different cultural expectations in a Chinese classroom that are different than in a U.S. classroom. Like there's going to be differences in terms of the European classrooms or wherever you live.
No, but even the small thing of saying thank you. I mean, if American students and if lots of Western students say thank you for everything, doesn't matter what they do. That's also one of the first languages they learn in another language. Of the first words they learn in another language, and say in Chinese, the way of saying thank you is not common at all. I mean, the way where we smatter it in between our speech, and in South Asia. Or in Asia, it's not as common, or it's not common at all, to say thank you for every single small thing that you're doing. So thank you for holding the door, thank you for the cup of tea. Everything's just far more. So that even small cultural things are very, very different between these two.
Yeah, and you only become sensitive to that when you've lived outside of your culture or your nation state, and you realize that your common sense that you grew up with is now irrelevant. That's why I loved, spending a bunch of time in Southeast Asia and then living in Ecuador, because there were all kinds of different things that have you, question them. But I will say, if it took a year or so to get to be able to sort of read things and get comfortable with the language, and that you can't expect those students coming from China or wherever to just be plopped down at a major research university and be able to navigate all of those systems. One thing that also may be potentially playing into this is that, remember, at most institutions of higher education, the first year, the classes are large and they're full of introductory classes, 100, 250. This article cites, I think, 500 to 1,000 people in a class. Your only interaction is with graduate assistants, who are generally, not even first-year teachers, and that whole piece creates, makes a lot of money for the universities. And as you go up in years, they until your junior and senior year, where they start actually losing money in terms of the classes are a whole lot smaller, much more specialized. Taught by very expensive professors. So there's actually an incentive, a perverse one, that you don't really care about the first years. They've paid their money, and whoever stays. Whoever doesn't, well, you still made a lot of money, and that's a big problem. Okay. Well, listen, if you have any. That's it for this week. If you've got any questions, please send them to questions@oplerno.com. And please make sure that you subscribe to Higher Ed Revolution, and that you're also checking out Woodblock, our blog, periodically. And make sure you check your emails, because you do get emails from Daniel and I about monthly updates and all kinds of cool stuff. We're working hard behind the scenes to create more traction, more faculty, and get those students for our classes. So I hope you guys have a great week, and thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you online.
Thank you. See you online.